Hey everybody, I wanted to do a quick walkthrough on showing you an existing project and what it takes to get live preview to work. More than anything else, you don't need live preview to use within Frontend Creator as long as you have GitHub Pages turned on. But there is a certain latency or delay between committing your changes and then visualizing those within Frontend Creator, either through a tab that's been launched or through the iframe. And in this video, I want to just show you how you can set up live preview, which we'll use in-memory local storage to facilitate a much faster development experience. So I'm going to create a new project. Give me new preview. And I will choose an existing project from Frontend Creator. As what it will clone, and I'll let it kick off. It now has created it. We should see this type of structure, as you can see here. There are a couple things that we're going to need to do in order to set this up. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to actually go to GitHub, and I'm going to turn on GitHub Pages. So if you watch here, I'm going to just refresh my repositories. There's new preview. What I'm going to do is just go here to Settings, scroll down here to GitHub Pages, and just set it to Master and just save it. Now I can go back over to my project, and here we just need to do a couple things. The first thing that I want to do here is I want to create a new index page so that my continuous integration can still build this for production, but for development, as I'm using this in Frontend Creator, I want to use index.html, so I want to repurpose it. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to create a new file. Actually, I'm going to open this file up and just copy all the contents, close it, and then create a new file, and I'm going to call it index.prod.html, and then I'll just paste what I just created in there, and then right click and commit that. So I'm just committing the changes that we have. And then the final step is, now that I have the prod, I'm going to go ahead and delete index.html because I'm going to use a new feature within Frontend Creator to get everything scaffolded and ready to go for live preview. And what that'll be is I just will right click here and it says configure live preview. If I do that, it'll inject 5 files, a 404.html, an index.dev.js, an index.html, a service worker dev, and a systemconfig.js. And so the infrastructure, what Frontend Creator does in order to provide live preview is it's using system.js as the backbone. Here you can actually see that it's using system.js, and this is just kind of the vanilla or the baseline, if you will. I'm going to commit this just before I do any changes, just so all these files get persisted and saved to the server. And then we'll walk through these. So we're using system.js. This is the default config. Let's jump to the index.js for a second here. The way GitHub Pages works, if you try to use routing or anything else that's not just the index or right off the root, it'll try to look for a 404. And this is a trick so that you can actually get it so that it'll allow you to request other resources besides just index.js. And so index.html uses this, and it actually works hand in hand with the 404.html. You need to have both of those in place. Once you have them both in place, then you can use push state routing or anything else from a standpoint of testing this. So the only other thing here is that we're just using systems.js. I'm using Axios for this index.dev.js, and I'll explain that in a second. System.js, we've already seen how that's that config file is just the baseline, and then the index.js calls this, or index.html calls this index.js, and so let's look at that next. This does quite a few things. Number one, what it does is it tries to read your package.json file, and you need to have dependencies defined in it because it uses the dependencies to try to build that System.js configuration so that it knows how to load those dependencies for System.js. It does the meta. It provides basically all the configuration that you would need within that fully configured just by doing it, the introspection of the package.json. Not only does it do that, so this is building a dependency map. It builds the map, the packages, and the meta, as you can see here, and then injects those into your System.js configuration dynamically. The other thing that we do here is, and we store them into local storage so that those files are don't need to be created on a subsequent call. The other thing that we're doing here between Frontend Creator, the application, and your development scenario is that we're using post message so that we can listen to the message API, so that we can send and receive messages. And this is important because every time you save, when we save immediately, then it automatically will update your existing tab or the iframe. And then finally, by doing that messaging, we can add and remove from the cache API. By doing that, that actually facilitates the service worker, which you see here that we're registering, to instead of calling that old version of maybe the app.js or whatever that we're going to be changing, it will pull the new change that you had because it's now been cached. Service worker here, then all it's doing here is just doing installation. It's activating, making sure that we don't have stagnant caches. But then in the fetch, it just checks to see if it's already been fetched or if it's already been cached through the caches API, because we can modify those caches here by putting it and overriding that same request. Then that facilitates these changes. And finally, let's actually see what it looks like. Maybe just open up welcome.js, and I'm going to go ahead and click on the preview. The application is loaded, and what you'll see here now, compared to the old style, is that if I say welcome from Frontend Creator and hit Control S, it's saved the changes locally, and you can see that there's been a modification. It hasn't actually committed it to the server. But the nice thing about that is we get almost an instantaneous update. Take note that if you are using this is using a service worker, and so service workers only work over HTTPS. Currently, Frontend Creator actually supports both, but at some point we'll turn HTTP off and only go over HTTPS. The other caveat with this is that because this isn't a full server using GitHub pages, we really can't, it really doesn't know how to load or how to handle, from a web server perspective, routes. So, for example, if I'm in the child router and I make this 456, when I save, it's going to refresh, but it's going to refresh and go back to home. So that is one thing to be aware of, but the cost of being able to have this type of capability to me is fairly minor with regard to anything else that you can get from this. And so, for example, let's go into users and let's just add the same thing. So we'll say GitHub users are awesome, and hit save. It'll show that both files are modified, and you'll see, oh, that immediately came up. So pretty nice to be able to have that. If I wanted to make things official, I could commit that. This is using the auto commit feature. And then if we go back to the project, you'll see that under sources, the welcome was 11 seconds ago, and so is users. It's the same standard blurb from what we did from cloning, but you can see the differences in time and everything else. So hopefully that gives you a quick example of what you can do with live preview. There are a lot of caveats, especially with your package.json. You have to be careful. Not all packages out there are System.js friendly and work the way that you want them to, but this is at least a start, and you can actually look at all the code that's generated using the index.dev.js, as well as how the service worker works, and see how everything is kind of orchestrated together to give you this type of user experience. at some point in the future, it would be nice to have a require.js and in any of the other loaders available that could support not only Aurelia but anything else out there. So love to hear your feedback and look forward to seeing what you guys build. Thank you.